In 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party took power in Germany. They began passing laws that limited the freedom of Jewish people and those who were considered inferior, as well as anyone who was brave enough to oppose their views.
Auschwitz was a German Nazi death camp during World War II that was the concentration camp with the most mass killings during this time. The complex contained 3 camps. Auschwitz I was built for Polish political prisoners in June of 1940. Auschwitz II, also known as Birkenau, was built in October 1941 and was the main site of mass killings. And Auschwitz III, built in October 1942, supplied forced labor.
All the camps were located near the pre-war German-Polish border in Upper Silesia, an area that Nazi Germany annexed in 1939 after invading and conquering Poland. It is estimated that the police deported at least 1.3 million people to the Auschwitz complex between 1940 and 1945.
The Nazis marked all the Jews living in Europe for total extermination, regardless of their age, sex, occupation, citizenship, or political views. Once they selected these people, they were transported to the camp like animals in cattle cars.
This train was specially converted for prisoners to travel in them. It took 48 hours for prisoners to get to Auschwitz. Once they arrived, people were usually separated from their families while in the camp. Survivor Irene Fogel says, "Our family was torn apart on the platform on arriving. My sister Serena was chosen for slave labor. My mother and the younger children were sent off to one side, and my father and 16-year-old brother to the other side. I never saw my family again."
Newly arrived persons classified by the SS physicians as unfit for labor were sent to the gas chambers. These included the ill, the elderly, pregnant women, and children. In most cases, 70 to 75% of each transport was sent to immediate death.
Those considered fit enough for slave labor were then immediately registered, tattooed with a serial number, undressed, deloused, had their body hair shaven off, showered while their clothes were disinfected, and entered the camp to work as a slave.
The living conditions at Auschwitz consisted of prisoners sleeping in wooden stable barracks. The interiors, designed to hold 52 horses, were partitioned into stalls. The stalls contained 3-tier wooden bunks. Several hundred prisoners lived in each such barrack. The mattresses they slept on were made out of straw, and they were full of rats and other insects. A constant shortage of water for washing and the lack of suitable sanitary facilities aggravated the situation and made it worse.
Prisoners in the camp received meals 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening. Prisoners with less physically demanding labor assignments received approximately 1,300 calories per day, while those engaged in hard labor received approximately 1,700. Many died of starvation and exhaustion.
A typical day at Auschwitz consisted of prisoners spending over 10 hours per day working, and the rest of the time was taken up by long roll call assemblies, lining up for food ratios, or a place in the latrines or the washroom, removing dirt and pests from clothing and disinfection. On March 31st, 1942, a minimum working day of 11 hours in all concentration camps was established. Initially, they worked at building the camp, leveling the ground, erecting new block and buildings, laying roads, and digging drainage ditches. After the camp was already built, prisoners also dug coal, produced armaments and chemicals, and built and expanded industrial plants.
At Auschwitz, there were many types of executions. People were shot to death in the pits near the camp. From the autumn of 1941 until the autumn of 1943, most of the executions by shooting took place in the courtyard of block number 11 in the main camp. Beginning in September 1941, executions were also carried out using poison gas.
Executions by hanging were carried out sporadically in the camp. As opposed to shooting or killing in the gas chambers, hanging was public. It was carried out in front of other prisoners, usually during roll call. The goal was to intimidate the witnesses, and the victims were most frequently prisoners caught trying to escape or suspected of aiding escapers. Liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, January 27, 1945. The Auschwitz main camp, the Birkenau death camp, and the Monowitz labor camp were liberated by soldiers of the Soviet Union in the First Army of the Ukrainian Front under the command of Marshal Konev on January 27, 1945.
On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler took his life, facing total defeat, marking the end of World War II 1 week later. The surviving Jews and other victims of the Nazis were liberated by Allied American, British, and Russian troops.
Historians and analysts estimate the number of people murdered at Auschwitz somewhere between 1.1, of whom the vast majority were Jews. The other 10% were Poles, Soviet prisoners of war, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, and others.
It is estimated that only about 200,000 people who passed through the Auschwitz camps survived.